Yes, it is true that disasters occur and they can impact us any which way they like. But good a thing that we are Nigerians. We rise up with resilience out of the ashes every time, just like now. Yes. And when we rise, we really do rise.
We rise. We are resilient. Yes. We are strong. And you see, given the time to find ourselves, one thing that can actually calm our free nerves is entertainment. Indeed. And it's a very good thing that our Nigerian entertainers are churning it out back to back to back to back to back.
Marking their space internationally. The Grammys, Burna
Boy brought it all the way home.
Wizkid, Thames, and I know that our guy, I'm unavailable. They know they see me. Oh, I know very soon that video you're gonna be getting yours.
Yes,
check him out on Jennifer Hudson's show when he performed.
When he performed, it was amazing. And that's why they say Nigerians are the happiest people on earth. Indeed. But I heard that we've gone down the scale a bit, but we are still there.
We're gonna rev it again. There is hope after the challenge.
Yes, there is.
The aftermath is the story of hope. Because in spite of the odds, there's light ahead. We are turning that curve with you to let you know that you always have people who believe in you, people you can count on. And it's not just about the money. It's about the messages that we'll be sharing today to all tinged with that message of hope. The aftermath, there is hope. It's ahead. Francis, we open the door today for a conversation with your background feature. Let's see it.
So much farmlands that we bring to that are lost. Food insecurity is one. Two, farmers will lose a lot of their investments. There's a dislocation of family life when flood occurs. Go to Thread Boy Estate in Abuja. You saw the buildings that were submerged. They lost a lot of valuable items, personal items. People took money from Federal Mortgage Bank. How can they recover? How do you think they will recover from that? Flood incidents comes with it all kinds of communicable diseases when the water source is polluted. At times also, schools are used to put people that are displaced. It affects academic year. Now, this one puts more pressure again on the scarce resources we have. Try to find alternative. How do we mitigate to ensure that students don't lose any of the terms in the academic calendar? You know what happened last year when at Kotonkari between Abuja and Abuja, the road became impassable for weeks. You couldn't go anywhere. Those who were already trapped, you could see, I saw some people with their trailers carrying some livestock. After some days, nothing to eat, some of those cows began to die inside the trailers. If you have about 3,000 houses, corresponding to 3,000 plots, you fully allocate all of them. You build beacon to beacon. You didn't make provision for the flood way. Where is it to reach? Out of the 3,000 houses, I'm using that as a hypothetical statement. You should have allocated about 200 houses or plots rather to flood, which could be by way of drainage system in different locations that will be cited based on proper study that will show you how to channel it. Yes, approval is given, but who gave it? Who? The person, what background does he have professionally to do the work? So many times, the people we started with all those things are just like any other person. So we refer to whoever any plot of land or estate is after. Then the relevant authorities hire the experts to carry out flood vulnerability mapping. We keep saying the issue of people to relocate. The big question it is to where? Moving from the known to the unknown. State sometime Niger State said that in 2014 that they had provision for what they call wet housing and dry housing. In other words, they built houses upland at higher grounds so that during the time of rainy season, those who are transacting their business within the banks of the river, whether they could be farmers or fishermen, move them up so that in the daytime they can go and do their business, their eyes open, in the evening they move up. In the event the flood come.
We should listen to early warnings. We should look at the weather predictions and we know when to go out and when to come back. We should move out of vulnerable locations, locations that are prone to flooding. People that have houses on waterways or people that have built on floodplains, we are pleading with them to vacate such locations. They should move to higher grounds and make sure when they want to buy a land during the rainy season. That will help you, will take you a long way, because when you buy a land during the rainy season, you'll be able to know the condition of that location. Is it a floodplain? Is it a vulnerable location? Is it a swampy place? Is it a place that can be flooded? When it rains, don't drive on running waters. You never can undermine the power of water, no matter how small the water is. Once it is flowing, please do not drive on running waters.
We Can Deal today is captioned Aftermath of Flooding on Families. We Can Deal.
Thank you so much, Frances, always bringing on your A game. As somebody said, when it comes to locating your house, there are three things you must be serious about. And they say, number one, location. Number two, location. Guess what number three is? Location. You must be very careful where you get a house because it has a lot to do with your well-being after you settle in. Now, when we talk about flooding in Nigeria, we talk about, it's easy for us to say government didn't do this and government didn't do that. But there is a lot of human activities that are leading to flooding. Like that woman rightly said, how are you disposing of your refuse? You understand? What are you doing in your environment? There are so many things we are doing that is leading to flooding. And anyway, let me not talk too much. Let me allow NTA Asaba lead this conversation.
Flooding is one of the most devastating natural disasters in the world, wreaking havoc on families and communities. Flood-prone regions, including Asaba and various communities in Delta State, are particularly vulnerable.
I had to go to the village to Okwanala, precisely. I had to go down there to bring my mother-in-law down to start staying with us. The experience was not funny at all. Their farm produce, they had to go and start harvesting it before time. You know, so many of them were perished by the flood. The entire village was submerged, you know. So, and they stayed with us for 3 good months.
My store, water reached me for me. Even me myself fall inside the water too. Because everywhere in a river. Even our Kotaro self, speedboats, canoe, we dey catch fish for inside. Everywhere don't become river. Now lake we take the water for inside water. My own children self I send there, and now only me and my husband now I come dey inside the town.
Flooding is basically a natural occurrence that is made worse by human activities such as climate change, deforestation, and urbanization. Together, these variables have a major effect on the intensity of flooding incidents.
Before now, we didn't have issue of ozone layer being depleted, but because of the economic activities through oil, we have, our areas being destroyed, our land space being destroyed, and then you find out that it affects other ecological systems.
all the trees on Okpanam Road, beginning from family support down to almost Isela Azaba, all those the trees have all gone. Houses have replaced them, plazas all over the places. If those trees were there, I don't think the flooding will be as bad as it is presently.
The impact of flooding in Delta State in the past was so pathetic that the residents need to take proactive measures to mitigate future flood disaster.
To move away when the flood is coming, the best way is to move away. Find upland to stay.
For now, we prepare so that we can go and remove our products in the farm.
The process should be driven collectively by everybody to make it work. And also, enforcement in the area of sanitation should be stepped up, and also make sure that people don't build houses indiscriminately. They must follow the plan that the government have. Every city, every community, every state, every country should have town planning, and that town planning should be adhered to, so that you don't find people building houses along waterways to block waters from flowing effectively. So if we put all of this in place, have good budgeting, and work with international communities, because we do know also that there are international organizations who also help us with funds, like World Bank and the rest of them, to curtail the issue of climate change, to curtail the issue of environmental degradation. And all of these monies should be channeled to the proper places.
State governments should invest in better flood management system, enhance community preparedness, and provide sustainable land use practices. It is expected that when these challenges are minimized, the devastating effect of flooding on families and communities in Asaba and similar regions will be to the barest minimum.
You're watching Weekend Deal. It's always a pleasure to have your company on the show, and today is no different. What are you doing with your refuse? You know, some Nigerians comfortably just take their refuse in-house, take it out-house, and pour it right in the drainage. Just pour it there, and it has become a practice. And neighbors see them and think it's a good thing, and perhaps a whole street is going to empty out, into the drainage. What do you think the outcome will be? So let us not self-harm. Let us not self-hazard, okay? And with this message of hope comes reassessing some of our practices. They have been ingrained, but we can change because it's in our best interest. We're talking about the aftermath of flooding in Nigeria, particularly as it impacts families. We know there is hope. How to get there now to a realistic place of hope is what we're especially talking about as we meet and greet our first guest. He is Professor John Osongwa. He's a climate change and environmental expert. He comes highly reputed with experience internationally and locally. I said, Prof, former Americana, now Nigeriana. Let's see what he brings to the table. We'll see his profile first. Welcome
so you're
to
welcome to
Prof.
Weekend Deal.
It's a pleasure being here.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, climate change and environmental expert. We do know that climate change is a big thing now. I'm going to start from a very, very, very simple level. What are we doing that is hurting the environment most? Of all the practices, everything we are doing, what hurts the environment most?
Well, I would have to say the way that we use our fossil fuel resources is key. We are finding out, based on decades of research, that when you burn certain fossil fuels, coal, petroleum, even to some extent gas, but gas has a lower climate signature than the other ones. So when you burn those things, you release certain gases, what we call greenhouse gases. And those gases are very harmful to our environment. So if I had to pick the most harmful practice, I would say it is the way that we are burning our fossil fuels. The more we transition away from dependence on fossil fuels, the cleaner the environment will be. And some of these impacts you see, even flooding, can be traced to climate change in a number of ways. So that would be my answer.
Okay, that's nice.
So let's leapfrog quickly into that light we talked about. The message of hope. Intermittently, I would like you to also remind Nigerians of some habits that is ingrained that we can do away with. But let's leap forward. You know, we've seen some methods that have been utilized over time to try to mitigate, but still we see that every year people have reason to fear. When the rain starts, it's heart in mouth. Will it come to our home this year? What can we do better? What can we do different? What can we make a permanent habit, both for those who seek to mitigate and for Nigerians themselves?
That's good. See, in order to look at what is happening in Nigeria, we have to expand the view a little bit. If you understand what is happening globally with climate change, then it becomes easier to manage what is happening within the country. See, climate change has become a threat to flooding and to a lot of other problems because we are burning more greenhouse gas. We're releasing more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Right now, about 30 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year is being released. And we're also burning a lot of other gases. So the compound effect is that the Earth is warming up. And when we talk about greenhouse gases, these are gases that will disrupt the natural flow of radiation. See, when the sun hits the Earth, it's supposed to radiate back. Some of that heat and radiation goes out. But when you now have these gases, they serve as a blanket, keeping the heat trapped. And that's what we call global warming and climate. So these gases have formed a blanket, an unnatural blanket. Some of those gases are also stripping away the natural blanket, the ozone layer. That's the one that God put there for us to help us. We're stripping away the ozone layer. We're now putting our own blanket, which is artificial, and it's warming up the planet. So as the planet is warming up, it's melting the ice, the Arctic ice, which has always been there to balance the weather systems. So the ice is very big. If you're looking at it, the Earth as a football in your hand, the top portion, you will see it just white, usually white. That white is ice. So that ice has been melting at a very rapid pace, and it is raising the water level of the oceans. So the ice is melting. It has made the water level to be higher all over the globe. And when the oceans are higher, they feed water into the rivers. You see why we're having so much flooding now? So when it rains now, you don't need as much rain again to have flooding because the water level is already higher naturally. So places that are on the coastline, Lagos, the Niger Delta area, all those areas have more water in the rivers, in the streams, in the creeks So you don't need so much water to have flooding. Then climate change also is drying up the land because of the heat again. It's drying up the land. You have desertification is coming in, particularly in the northern, in the northern areas. And as you mentioned, in a lot of areas, we have cut down all the trees. So you don't have the natural buffer that you would have. So when you have dry land, when you have rain, instead of the rain absorbing into the soil the way it should, it runs off. That's what we call flash flooding. So that's why you see a lot of flooding in the northern part of the country now, because the ground is very dry. What we call aridification, which almost like concrete. If you pour water on concrete, it doesn't penetrate. But if it's regular soil, you see that over time, the water will sink in. So these are global climate change factors that we must take account of. If you're not aware of these things, you would think, okay, flooding has always been with us. Our grandparents suffered it. It will just come and go. No, we have different dynamics now.
This knowledge you have shared with us, is it not public knowledge? And were it to be public knowledge, or if someone bothered, those who can make decisions, those who can bring positive change, if they did have this knowledge or they do have it, do you see the knowledge working vis-a-vis with the plans and strategies being put out there for mitigation? And if not, when and how?
I think Nigeria, I think the policymakers in Nigeria are very much aware of climate change now because I interact with them. It's no longer a novel. When I started talking about this 10 years ago, I used to look like
Al Gore.
When
Al Gore started, Al Gore started so many years ago.
I look like a lonely prophet in the wilderness. But now, thankfully, we are beginning to get it because I'm always engaged with the policymakers and governors and leaders. But the challenge we have now is there is still an over reliance on response and relief. See, that is the problem. I want us to have a paradigm shift towards prevention and mitigation. Response. Yes, we know what the global causes are, and we need to domesticate some of the policies that will help us to prevent and mitigate.
You mean go statewide, not general, not national?
Yes, it needs to. We need to cascade even down to the local government, even down to estates and communities. People need to be aware because you were talking about some of the habits. A lot of people who have historically been flooded. Excuse me. Some people have been flooded historically. People living along the banks of River Niger, River Benue, people in the Lokoja axis, people in the Niger Delta area now. A lot of them are getting flooded almost every year. So if that is happening to you, that should be a clue that you're living.
I've always wondered, each time I'm coming from Abuja to Benue, and then you're driving on the bridge, you see these residents, these houses, they are there year in, year out. They are flooded year in, year out, and they are still there. So is there something we are missing?
That taps into another issue that we need to talk about. Some of them know that they are going to be flooded. They are hoping it wouldn't be as bad as the previous year. But the key reason is some of them don't have the resources.
Anywhere to go.
They don't have the resources to relocate.
They don't have anywhere to go.
I will pack and go and live anywhere because this is your life.
Yeah, this is your life.
But let's extrapolate that a little bit. You said you will go anywhere.
Anywhere, yes.
That's somebody's land.
Prof, anywhere
you're going to someone's land.
No, but the likelihood of somebody coming to steal your land where flooding has made a home is unlikely. But I rather lean on the side that some people don't have anywhere to go. But now, whose responsibility is it to make a place available for them to go? Because that's part of the mitigation and the structural adjustments that we ought to make before the flood comes.
We need to be very, very deliberate about what we're doing. The people living on the river banks, floodplains, we need to help them to relocate. You need to help them because the impact of the devastation is more costly for us. When you have flooding along the river banks, floodplains, you're going to have loss of life, loss of property, loss of livelihoods. A lot of farmlands are being washed away. People engage in aquaculture and all that. The livestock, everything is being washed away. So that has significant impact on the economy, on our GDP, on the welfare index. So we need to be proactive. We need to move people to higher land, assist them to move. Then those communities where we can still mitigate, we can build barriers along the waterfront.
So that,
it protects them. And we can even go a step further using technology now. You can install warning systems on those barriers so that when the water reaches a certain level, the alarm will go off.
When you say warning systems, okay.
Yes.
Of course, we have technology at our beck and call. We ought to.
So I was going to ask a question. I don't know. It's going to sound very mundane again. And I have a thing with mundane questions because...
But get to the truth.
I like mundane questions, trust me. But let's go on a break. Our guest is here, ready to tell us all we need to know about our environment. Don't go away.
Natural disasters occur. The aftermath can bring about unheard of challenges. But as long as we have life, we're telling you today on Weekend Deal that our stories of hope. Hope for you, hope for all Nigerians. Talking about natural disasters and flooding specifically. And that's the message we're bringing to your homes today as we touch base in Akure, where the Osemawe, in line with his people and love, he came out to encourage them and tell them that, yes, we're in this together, and together we'll see it through. Ekiti, on those states, I beg your pardon, wade into this conversation.
Rainfall is supposed to be a blessing to man, but it brought an unpleasant consequence to the people of Ondo Town in Ondo State. Following days of torrential rains, heavy flooding occurred in the town, cutting off vehicular traffic, rendering many homeless and loss of properties.
The flood there is too much that we can't even control. When the rain started around 3, so we were like, maybe the rain will soon stop, Around 4, we can now see the heavy flow of the water here. We are now, what is going on? So we run from that side to this building. From this building, we couldn't stand. The water shifts, cover us, cover all the cars here.
Everywhere is flooded. Even we don't, there's no chance for us to take anything inside from house. Along the line, we just saw that one man rolling inside the water.
The state of my house is very bad. I can't live in the place now. You see me outside now. I'm just looking, all my clothes, everything, all my properties is spoiled already. So I'm just looking for a place to stay now. I can't stay there. I called some people to come and help me clean it this morning now. They said they are collecting 200,000. Where will I get it? I'm a retiree.
2 of my children were in the house and climbed to the roof to stay. I could not enter the house to carry them until the water subsided to my waist level.
Most houses have been flooded every year, and some of the houses have been, and they were not in the waterway before, because it was a small stream until desalination.
The problem that happened was so much, let alone if it rained for 1 week. So we appeal to the government to please come to our aid. People's properties that got damaged, we cannot quantify it.
The king of the ancient city and the state government, who were saddened by the occurrence, promised to take action to forestall further flooding.
When you see things like this, you have to look back and start thinking of the cause of causes. Is this just an event? But that event is the product of some processes. There are some buildings or structures obstructing the waterways. We just have to look seriously into all this. And most importantly is the role we have to play. I'm talking of the indigenous, that they should not be putting refuges in the waterways.
What happened was as a result of the water getting to a point and having a blockage, and we are able to trace it, and that's why we are having a machine here. This is the first we are seeing this year that we are so that is so horrible.
Why we are here is to come and assess the situation and collect data of those who are affected, and this will take back to government and advise them on what to do.
It would be recalled that the Nigerian Meteorological Agency (NIMET) has predicted flooding in the state some months back.
That's just so sad. I mean, hearing that woman say that or everything she has in life is outside, and somebody is asking her for 200,000 to help them move it. It's just really sad. But I would like to quickly add here that, yes, we know we are contending with the environment, like a doctor has been telling us and all that, but if only as human beings we can stop all activities that is hurting the environment or aiding flooding. If only we can do that, then we'll allow God Almighty to help us, and then we might be on our way to Huru. You can never tell. Now, joining the conversation to enrich our conversation is our next guest. He is a consultant, a public health consultant, physician, medical statistician, and epidemiologist. He is Taifa Kene. Let's see his profile.
Dr. Tefa. We were just teasing him when we saw his profile. We said he was smiling so much when he was receiving gallants. Everyone likes to be acknowledged and rewarded, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We're talking about Nigeria and what Nigerians are going through right now when we focus on flooding. We're more particular about the aftermath, and we want to share the message of hope. It's daunting, it's tough, but stay hopeful. And when we want to look at that, we do know that rescue efforts have been ongoing. But we also know that in some cases, diseases could be the result of experiences such as this. Who is hands-on to help the myriad of people who are affected? Should we be more worried now that diseases will spread? How available are consultants like yourself for people who are experiencing this flood?
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here again. For us to situate this situation in more contextual issues, let's look at the cascade from the head perspective. First, there's displacement. Second, there's displeasure. Third, there's distress. Fourth, you have disease. And then lastly, there's dysfunctional health system. So whatever we're doing, we must look at this in that cascade. Now, the head component of this is both the hardware and the software. When there's displacement, what happens? Of course, Prof has said that before, there's loss of livelihood and other things. People become naturally unhappy. You just watch the video from Ondo. The woman is not happy. So the question is, who makes her happy? There must be a support systems or people who are willing to support her willingly. Someone should not be asking her for money at this point that she needs help to get back to her life. Now, if there is displeasure and it's not managed well, it goes into distress. Some people may not be able to cope. That coping mechanism brings mental health issues. Now, it's one component that nobody is thinking about with relationship to disasters of this nature. Mental health. Some people cannot naturally cope with the situations. They go into mental health. We have social issues,
trauma.
Social trauma, post-traumatic distress syndrome. Don't want to use big words, but people now become the kind of hope. Now, one group that is totally neglected when disaster happens and it has impact on their health and psychology is children. I can tell that most children who experience disasters never completely recover from it throughout their lifestyle. Because what happens at that stage is that the brain is developing and the trauma affects them. They're asking questions that the parents cannot answer. Now, one component that we need to intentionally as a people bring hope is mental health. And mental health is not just about doctors. It's about the fact that I'm willing to give a helping hand. I'm willing to say, come on, stay with me for a while, and then we'll support you. I'm willing to say, oh, I have some rice here, let's share. I'm willing to say, oh, come on, your children can come stay with my children. They watch television together, and then when you get back to your feet, they are back to you. So we must look at that. That is one component that most people don't pay attention to. Now, the next one is disease. So we're talking about displacement, displeasure, distress,
and disease.
Disease. Yes. Now, in fact, the next one is coming up. So now what happens with disease? Two things. These people may be moving to a location with their own disease. So they may have tuberculosis. So they're moving to a location where they are going to spread the tuberculosis. They may have diabetes. Now, of course, they have people who are caring for them at that point. They move to a location where nobody cares for them the way they trust the individual. I mean, the way they are supposed to be cared for, and they trust such people. Again, the situation gets worse. Another issue is that they are moving to a community that already have a condition that they will also get infected. Now, we are seeing the spread of buri ulcers and chronic ulcers around the river banks of border towns with Cameroon. These are issues that we have seen happen, and essentially it's about this displacement that's happened. Then lastly, the dysfunctional health system. Now remember that doctors are involved. So we're supposed to be caring for doing other things. Epidemiologists have been mobilized to all those locations. We're supposed to pay attention to other things. We'll be moved. The system is overwhelmed because most people are leaving the country as health workers, the so-called Japa syndrome. And of course, the few that are left here now have to leave what they're supposed to do naturally to do disaster management on the health component of it. Now, importantly, while they are doing this, they're also overwhelmed. There's burnout. So now for families who have had a health system that is caring for them, once they move, they are going to face a new total challenge, facing a new set of health workers that they can't even trust and things like that. But also remember that the hospitals also get destroyed. Remember the situation of the teaching hospital in Borno.
Yes,
it will take the next 10 years of concerted effort for that hospital.
The next, how many years did you say? A decade?
10 years
A decade.
for that.
To get it back on his feet?
Yes, the equipment in that hospital, the cost, I mean, it's another disaster on its own.
My first question will be, why don't we experience hurricanes in this climate? Not that I want them. Number two, why are they named after females? Because I have an issue with it. It's Hurricane Katrina. It's Hurricane... Why? Why women?
The first question is, why are we not having...
We don't experience it.
Hurricanes. The types of storms you get can be traced to your geographical location.
Okay.
So there are things that we suffer from here that we don't suffer from in the U.S. Over here we have desertification, for one thing. In the U.S. you have tornadoes, you have hurricanes.
Volcanoes.
Then you go to the Asia Pacific region, you have typhoons. Even at southern part of Africa now, we're having typhoons. Actually, typhoons and hurricanes are the same thing. It's just that depending on where you are, the terminology changes. But they all can be traced to climate change. Why are we having hurricanes? Why are we having severe...
That's why I asked the question, because if it's all brought on by climate change, why some specific part of the world?
It's a function of geography.
Okay.
That's just it. So we are having severe, even though we're not having hurricanes, and hurricanes form because the ocean temperature, when it gets very warm, it amplifies the evaporation rate of water. You see, that's what is happening. So because the earth is warming up, we now have more subduction of water going up into the atmosphere. When it goes up there, it now meets an ocean current and comes back as hurricane, excessive moisture, comes back as heavy snowstorm. In our instance, we're getting more torrential rainfall here because the rate of evaporation is higher. When you have warmer temperatures, you get more moisture, and that moisture cannot stay up in the atmosphere. Comes down. Yes,
we have the one we are managing. We have the one we are managing. Is there any likelihood that we ever have such a thing here?
No.
We don't even want to know of it.
But the water we're getting in excess now is posing another problem for our dams, and that is what happened in the Borno instance. And we are seeing it, almost every year you have Cameroon releasing water from their Lagdo Dam into Nigeria. That also has implication. Nigeria right now has over 300 dams, and we need to increase the rate of vigilance that we have with our dams. Over time, as the water is coming into the reservoir for the dam, it brings sediment, it brings sand, it brings debris. So those things accumulate over time. So you find that with most dams we have in Nigeria now, most of them, sediment accumulation has reached over 50% of the capacity of the dam. So when you have...
Is this also public knowledge or private research?
It's public now. This is NTA.
Over 50%.
He says it's public now.
Yes, public knowledge, but I mean that,
Well,
you know, I know you to do a lot of research. Is the information out there
already? That's
for
what
all
you
and
mean.
sundry to know?
Yes.
Are we paying attention to
they
it?
did some, I know that there was a recent survey research in the southwest part of the country, and what I've just said is consistent with what they found a few years ago. Over 50% of them have sediment accumulation that is more than half of the capacity. So if you want to really deal with dam management, and if we don't do that, because of what I mentioned before, you have more water flowing in now because the Arctic ice is melting, the oceans are higher, they feed water into the dams.
Prof,
so
did you bring any good news for us, for Nigerians?
Yeah, I'm getting to the good news, but
Okay.
understand what is happening.
Okay.
The good news is that now with what has happened, there is a new focus on looking into our dams. I know the federal government is mobilizing resources. We need to look at our dam because you need to make sure you're having desilting. Desilting is where you dredge up all that sediment periodically. Because if you don't do that, every dam is built with a certain capacity in mind. So if you have reduced your dam capacity by over 50% and the same water is coming in, what are you going to have? It will breach the dam or it will break the dam. So we don't need that happening. So the message of hope is that because of what's happened in Borno, there's greater vigilance now, greater resources. Experts are going to go in and do what needs to be done.
Good one. Good one. You know, that message of hope is so integral now. Nigerians, I said we got you. We got you. And good a thing that work is going ahead of this disaster so that hope will not just be what we're saying. We see it in reality. We're still talking about the aftermath of this natural disaster, flooding. We're feeling it. The impact is here and we're living with it. Let's go to Ibadan to see how they are mitigating, you know, this flooding. Ibadan, how is it with you? Please share with us on Weekend Deals.
Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, has had its own share of flooding in the past, especially the notorious Ogunpa flood incident in the 80s, popularly referred to as Omiyale phenomenon in the state. In recent times, devastating floods has thrown many communities in different states of the nation into chaos, prompting local authorities and residents to implement innovative strategies for flood mitigating after rainfall or release of water from dam. An expert shed more light on causes of flooding.
As a result of changes in the climate, you know, because of global warming, we are having intensification of the hydrological cycle. As a result of increasing population and increased urbanization, you have more artificial surfaces, you know, because much of the area is now being built up. So with the built up surfaces, you have less infiltration of rainfall. And because you have more artificial surfaces, the storm runoff being generated is much more. So the drainage capacity is not commensurate.
It is, however, observed that Ibadan and Oyo State in general is not experiencing flood unlike before. What are the relevant agency and state government doing to mitigate flooding?
His Excellency didn't relent when he came on board because, you know, one of the major issues about Ibadan in particular, your state, is flooding. So he was very strongly proactive about it. And he didn't just, leave it at what was done before now. He aggressively went on expansion of waterways. The Ogunpa waterway river, the Odonakeke waterway, several waterways has been expanded, and what actually causes flooding most of the time is when you have bottlenecks. It was just basically because some of those channels, they were blocked. The Ministry of Environment we're doing so much campaign against putting waste in our waterways. So those were the things that contributed so much to the prevention of flooding in Oyo State.
What are the measures to enforce environmental laws in Oyo State and expectations of the residents?
Some people during the raining time, some people came out with their waste, and we got hold of it, and immediately the next day we went to seal about 4 buildings. So they have to pay heavily to make sure. And so how much does it cost you to dispose your waste properly? It's just a little token, and so we frown heavily against offenders.
We're telling people, don't build on flood paths, don't build close to river banks. On the aspect of dredging, we ensure that all major rivers and waterways that are prone to flooding are dredged.
Respondents said enforcement of necessary environmental laws, regular dredging of waterways, and proper orientation on need for residents to eschew dumping of refuse into drainages and paying attention to information from government agencies like NIMET and so on will go a long way in mitigating flooding, which can lead to loss of lives and property in our society and the nation at large.
It's not rocket science that if you do something wrong, there is a resultant consequences. And the way it's going to happen, what comes back to you will be 10 times that wrong action you took. If we do something good, imagine having 10 times as good as what we did. See that lady now, someone who ought to have wisdom, a woman of age, maturity, disposing her refuse inside, a drainage, one wonders what is her expectation in the short, mid-term, and long run. But anyway, we're talking about hope here. Perhaps you did not know that it was a resultant consequence. And that's why Nigerians are reaching out. They say, thank you, our Americana prof.
No, they were laughing. I was
They
wondering
say,
why
thank you, our prof from America. They said that it's great to have you in Nigeria. That the way you've impacted America, please impact Nigeria, and it must move from knowledge to action. They say thank you for coming on NTA to share and share all that you know. Someone again says, I really appreciate Prof because I learned a lot this morning. Let us know who you are and where you're coming from. Someone is asking questions about America. No, ask about Nigeria, okay? Steve, ask about Nigeria. That's our focus. Flooding here. Let me take one more. Yes, they said, thank you, Dr. Tefa. Good to have you in the house. I've not seen you for quite a bit. And yes, diseases often occur. It's how we manage them that will determine the long-term results. Okay, many of them are saying thank you, NTA. The information we're getting is critical at this time. And now they need to know the best way to move forward, how solutions can be provided. Patience is over to you now.
Okay. All right. Let's even allow Dr. Tefa come into this conversation. You've told us at the stage the D's, you mentioned to us the D's, and we've heard you. But are there things that, because we're talking hope here, Nigerians, as we're speaking, Nigerians are in this same situation. What can they do to ensure that they improve the little things they can do, even in this situation, to improve their health? What can they do? What should they look out for, even in this situation as it is now?
Okay, so the first thing, so again, to address the issues is the same cascade of D's that you talked about.
Okay.
When there's displacement, what is needed first? Food and water. So, and the food we are talking about here is not all those expensive food.
Okay.
Eat the right food, eat healthy, eat vegetables and stuff. Because again, immune system is compromised. We have not even looked at that. Now, once people are distressed, their metabolism goes haywire. Nothing is working in terms of their metabolism, in terms of the anger they express and stuff like that. So again, you are frustration and stuff. So you need to now look for the right food to eat. Of course, water is already contaminated. So what type of water do you get? So ensure that water is boiled. If you get water that is, you can't get water, boil it, sieve it. Make sure that whatever water you are taking is wholesome. Yeah. Now, once you do this too, eating the right food
and drinking water,
you prevented so much of what would have happened to the family. Here we are talking about contaminated water Do you know what is contaminating it? It could be just the bacterial causes cholera that is there. One sip, diarrhea, and epidemics, another batch.
And that's more devastation.
Now, I talked about it. I will leave the prevention aspect of it to Prof to discuss in terms of building dams along the river banks.
Yes.
Now, but it's important to note that these disasters, when they happen, they just take us far several years
back
into another challenge of problems.
Yes.
And for the doctor, it's not just now, because you will see people who come with diarrhea of all kinds caused by all type of organism. Cholera epidemics will emerge, so we need to start planning as epidemiologists to see how our response will happen. Thank God we have NCDC that is doing a lot of work in terms of preparedness.
You know that we cannot talk enough about the courage and resilience of Nigerians. But what is even more important is the fact that what Prof referenced earlier, that we will spend less money in prevention and mitigating efforts than we're spending in the aftermath. Our second break beckons. Please don't go. We'll be right back.
Our thoughts and prayers are with the entire Pauline Talent family. Okay, so our guest is still here, and the conversation is still the aftermath of. There's been a whole lot of intervention. Very altruistic Nigerians came out. They donated. A whole lot was given. What can we do for the masses to feel the impact of all these donations?
We need to really look at something that is sustainable. People mean well, no doubt. And I remember even going back to the 2012 flood, over 10 billion was raised. I think Dangote was part of the head of that committee. But what happens is most times resources are devoted to relief and response. And I think that is a paradigm shift we need to have. I've said it. Here's what we should be doing. Mr. President earmarked, I don't know if it has been given, over 100 billion to go into Borno to deal with this issue that has arisen. Most of that money should go into prevention and mitigation for the next round of disasters that we will have. But if you know what is coming, you can prepare yourself so it doesn't harm you. So what we need to do, we need to look at our dam management. We need to look at dam desilting. We need to look at dam building too. We've talked about the Lagdo Dam and the Nigerian Dasan Hausa Dam that should be built to buffer people, Adamawa, Benue, Kogi State. We need to look into that seriously, because that will continue to happen. Each time they release excess water, we suffer downstream. Another thing we need to do, now we know that flooding has become the most recurring, most devastating natural disaster in Nigeria. It has been by far. No other natural disaster affects us the way flooding does, because it has myriad impact on us. Loss of productivity, loss of IGR, because people cannot produce anymore. Then you're spending money to do relief, to do medical intervention and all that. Then the other thing we need to do, we need to now begin to think of insurance. We know flood would come. What if we can ensure all the farmers within a state, there are some private companies that can come in and insure people against flood. Government can use some of this money that has been earmarked to pay for the premium. It will be cents on the dollar, as we say in the US, where you spend, a kobo to get 100 naira. So insurance premium is very low. So governments at the state level, even at the national level, can say, okay, we will pay the premium for insurance, so that if it happens, we don't know whether it will happen, when it will happen, but if it happens, that insurance company can pay the farmers who have lost their crops, be able to help people relocate and things like that. Then the other thing we need to do is to begin to give serious information in people's languages and dialects.
Good one.
In a way that they can understand.
That's where NOA will come in.
Yes. Even at the state level, they have commission of information and all that. Government can use some of this money that has been and say, look, we're going to re-educate our people.
Yes.
This is not your grandfather's flood that you used to have. The rain we're having is heavier, and it comes faster, it comes in higher quantity.
That means the consequences are
more severe, and it's going to continue to happen. So what do we do now? We're going to educate you to say, look, move to, if you can, move on your own to higher ground. Then the other thing that we need to do, those that are on the banks of the river, we need to have an early warning system for them. I remember living in the US 30 years ago, where I lived, we were right on the ocean, a place called New Bedford. And they had, which probably was built 20 years before I got there, they had a barrier, what we call a levee. They had a huge concrete barrier, so big you can even drive a vehicle on top of it, but it was high. It was at least 10 feet high. And they had warnings, signals. So whenever the water reaches, even if it's at night, if the water reaches and you hear an alarm,
be given an alarm.
Alarm will wake you up and you run to higher ground.
Quickly.
So we can, those things are very cheap. They are water sensitive. We can put them in strategic points so that when the water rises, because a lot of times the flooding happens at night. You see, most times it rains at night. You wake up and you see that the landscape has changed. So if you are sleeping, your family, children, you can evacuate quickly what is most essential to you, which is life. We need to build differently. Those people who are building on the banks of the ocean and Lagos and all these places, in the US, we have a different building code for the ocean front, which means you raise your houses on pillars up to like 10 feet. The other message I want to pass, whatever was reclaimed from the ocean eventually will go back into the ocean. So people need to be careful. They go and pour this stuff. The ocean is rising every year now. It's rising and we are measuring it. So we need to be proactive. We need to understand what is going on. And instead of using the 100 billion for relief and rice, let's use it to change.
Let us spread it.
Yes. Let's use it to change the way that we approach
So give
flood.
some sections, attention.
Yes.
We're on the march. Yes, we are a resilient people. We know who we are. And we also know how to apply wisdom when it is necessary, which is all the time, especially now. It is our hope that all that Prof has said has been heard. I know Prof also has meetings outside of here. So he's been speaking with those who can bring the necessary change that will bring the most positive impact on all Nigerians. Anyway, your final word.
My final word is simply to say that where the situation we find ourselves, we need to be supportive to each other. Mental health is very, very important. Manage anger at your own level, but don't stimulate anger in someone else. And for that, we can live together, we can be supportive. Then make sure you eat right. There are people that eat right and dance. So all
food even affects our mood.
Yes, so you eat right and dance the type of music that we have here. And then hope will manifest itself.
Eat vegetable and rice. Let's hear you.
My word is, we must get away from rice politics palliative. We must get away from rice palliative because it is making it is affecting our food security. We need to look at the root causes of some of these disasters, get to the bottom and fix some of these things. If we do some foundational things, we will do less relief and rice palliative.
Prompt action is key.
Prompt action, hope renewed.
Yes, hope. Nigerians, there is always hope. And finally, we spend less money if we put preventive measures in place and mitigation rather than the aftermath rescue. Okay, God bless Nigeria.
Bye. Goodbye.